parenting is the toughest job on earth. It's the most irrational job that you can go into.
Once you have a child, you never stop worrying for a child, even when the child is an adult.
Hi everyone, I'm Lina Ng and welcome to Canteen Chats. Every parent wants the best for their children, right? We want our children to do better than what we did and have the opportunities that we never had. So we work really hard to give them the best we can. But what do we do when efforts don't seem to produce the results we expect? This episode, we're going to talk about what is the best for our children and whether we are doing enough for them. And hopefully, through the conversation, we can better understand why we parent the way we do. And today we have three guests with me. They are a youth mentor, Mr. Narasimman, co-founder and executive director of Impart. Assistant Professor Cheung Hoi Shan, she's from NIE Psychology and Child and Human Development Department.
Yes, thank you.
A parent and a lecturer in strategic communication at the Wee Kim Wee School of Communication and Information, NTU. Yen Tan,
Hello.
Welcome to Canteen Chats.
Yay.
From a parent's point of view, why is parenting in Singapore so stressful?
Well, always worry, can they succeed, right? According to the way we define success in Singapore. And what's that? I guess this way, if we think about it, it's become very narrow in terms of success. And many people think of what is the amount of money you earn, right? What kind of job do you have? What kind of title do you have? And all these are very subjective. So then parents start to compare, right, with each other. Right? Oh, my children are all in medical school and law school, right? And then I'll feel like mine aren't.
I think because, as a society, we pride ourselves to being a very hardworking population. And also, of course, in the process of that, we set very high expectations for ourselves, right? And when we do that, and parents have that kind of work ethos, very inevitably, we bring that into the home space as well. And also we expect our children to do well.
So it is one way. It's always the parents' expectations of the children.
Not just the parents, because the whole society is such that, we have to develop our people, we have to be a hardworking population, we have to always move forward and, think about what are some of the things if we don't, if we lag behind. And I think it is really the whole ambience, right, of the whole society. It's not just the parents at home, but when the child goes to school and they see, my friends are all working so hard, and the teachers also have the same narrative, then what is the child supposed to do? How is the child supposed to react? Push forward and push forward. One thing about, being a parent, I feel that, there is so much social comparison, right, in this day and age on social media, or talking or just looking over your shoulders and seeing what other people are doing. But the person that we're fully accountable for is really the child. They are the only people who can say, am I feeling satisfied in this relationship? Or to put it very bluntly, has this been a good parenting approach?
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's this, comparison going on all the time. Whether we like it or not, whether we are conscious about it or not, we're always comparing something to something, right? Ourselves to other people, our children to other people's children. And unfortunately, it's human nature, I guess. And this creates maybe jealousy, maybe hope, maybe inspiration, right? Depending on the person. And that leads to the actions that we parents take.
Yeah, so I think Singapore is a meritocratic city, right? But unfortunately, I feel like we have internalized the meritocracy. When I talk about internalized meritocracy, what I mean is that it suddenly is tied to our identity. The efforts that we put in, the work that we have built is tied to our self-esteem, is tied to our self-worth. And when that happens, everything that we do is out of trying to be better. And if I'm not good, then it is me that is not good enough for the society.
So is that how the youth felt? When you counsel them?
I think many of the young people just feel that they cannot meet up to the standards of the education system in Singapore. And when they feel like that, and sometimes there is no parent that is imposing that. I've even heard parents who say it's okay to fail, But when
I love
it's,
parents that like that.
when it's told to the child say, why do you say that? I want to pass. Give me the tuition. Give me this. Give me that, so that I can do better than my friends.
Aw.
So when that becomes internalized, then what happens is that even the parents struggle of how to recalibrate the child's expectation back to maybe a bit more normal.
Yeah, I mean, it's wonderful, right? We talk about expectations, but I just want to play devil's advocate a little bit. But at this point in school, math is a compulsory subject, right? So it's like, talking to children all the time is like, why am I even doing this? Why am I doing chemistry and math, right? And of course, the straight answer is because you need to do well here in order to move on to the next stage. And so I think parents also feel, the pressure of, just helping the child along, deal with the exams. After that, you can do whatever you want.
So, have you ever felt disappointed in your children because you expect them to do something and then they turn out the other way?
Yeah, so let me tell you about my son, right? I have two children. I have a son and a daughter, and they're in their 20s now, right? So all this happened some time back. So when I became a dad and I married early and had kids early, right? So of course, when you have your first child, you have a lot of expectations. And I have always done well in school, right? I am sort of a person who has gotten my A's and gotten good jobs in my life. So I naturally expected my son to be able to walk in my same footsteps. And at first it was okay, primary 1, primary 2. Then after that, from primary 3 or 4 onwards, his grades started to drop, right? And continuously. And I thought that it was because he was not studying hard enough, or he was lazy, or he was trying to do things his own way, right? And I ended up scolding him a lot. And but around the time he was 10 years old, I decided, okay, it's not working. Okay, maybe he has some challenges, right, with the 2 subjects, and I didn't scold him so hard anymore. But I was always thinking that the problem could be maybe his attitude or his approach to studying. Unfortunately, I was very overly harsh on him, right? So it wasn't until secondary 4 that his maths teacher told me and my wife that maybe you should send him for a checkup, right? And that's what we did. We found out he had learning difficulties, right? And that's why he found it difficult to do subjects like maths and science, right? And things that other students may find easy, he actually found it very difficult, and he needed more time. And when I received that diagnosis, right, my heart was broken because I was so ashamed of what I had done, right? That I assumed that it was his fault, but this was not something that was his fault. And I really regretted how I had treated him. Yeah, and so after that, everything changed, and I decided to just accept my son for who he is and what he would like to do, right? And I didn't impose my standards on him anymore. Yeah.
So because of that, when you have your daughter, does that really help you then not to place your expectation on her, but to probably see what she likes before you decide on certain...
Yeah. So I... maybe you call it daddy's girl, right? But I've never put the same pressure on her as I did my son. First thing, because of the lessons I learned with my son. And the second thing is because I found that she was naturally able to, get the grades, right? And today she's at the university. So I really had a very hands-off approach to my daughter. Unfortunately, as a result, she will always pressure herself, right? Even though I don't say anything, she'll pressure herself. And for her, it's me telling her, can you take a break? Can you, don't push yourself so hard. Yeah, and so that's a different kind of worry. So it's kind of strange, right? When you have one child with learning difficulties and the other one who actually does pretty well in school. So how do you talk to them together is always something that I have to think about. How do you appear to be fair, right? To both children at the same time. Yeah, with their very different perspectives, the different paths that they'll walk in life. Yeah, so this is something that me and my wife, we've had to navigate for some time now, and I would say we've become better people for it.
Parents need to change.
Yep.
And we should allow ourselves to make mistakes. Sometimes we feel disappointed that we make certain mistakes and we need to forgive ourselves and learn, right? So, Naresh, how should parents deal with disappointment?
I feel like a lot of parents internalize disappointments too, right? And firstly, it's okay for the child to make mistakes. In fact, if the child doesn't have a setback, they won't learn how to grow again. It's part of becoming resilient as a child. It's part of having that self-concept of themselves, right? Like how are they growing up? Who are they? And so if a parent gets disappointed, then what happens is that their own emotion is going to get in the way of the young person.
It always does, yes.
Yes. So when I work with parents, there's one a parent that was just very disappointed and stopped talking to the child. Okay. For like we are talking about months, and then
Disappointed with what?
with just the child not
Behavior or not showing good results?
not doing well in school, just failing every exam.
Okay.
So, but this is a young child that we are talking about in primary school. So she said that I will just let him do what he wants. If studies is not the thing for him, then I'll just let him do what he wants, right? But the child was doing everything to get the mother's attention. So what he told me is, I just want my mother to spend time with me. But if I get into trouble, my mother spend more time with me. So I'm like, oh, this is not working out, right? Because the parent is disappointed with the child, but then the child is also yearning for the parent's approval and all that. But there was an underlying situation for the young person. But because the parent doesn't understand that, the child doesn't understand that, both parties are just trying to get each other's attention in a way.
So I do research on parenting, child development, and we speak with parents. And the parents are telling us that actually the relationship with the child early on in the primary school years are still okay. So in terms of the early primary years, the real tension comes in when the child is in primary 5.
Okay.
That is when they know in 2 years they're going to sit for the first national exam.
Right.
And that is what parents are telling us, that things start to change, or the dynamics start to change, because they find themselves having a bit of anxiety to push the kids along. And in the process, I think the children are also getting used to the change dynamics, right? Like, we don't used to be like that, right? We didn't used to be like that. We used to have a lot of fun as a family, but what's going on, right?
There are times that we need to decide when can we risk. That's calculated risk.
It's heartbreaking. I mean, when we do our research, and sometimes we speak with parents, and some parents actually break down during the interview, and they just like, I really don't want that. I know that this is not going, or the relationship is not going in the way that it should, but I have no choice. So we hear this a lot. I have no choice.
Yes.
I have no choice but to push them along. The typical family. Most parents want the kids to do well in school.
Yeah.
Right, get into a good job, because the worry is that, hey, once I'm gone, are you able to sustain yourself in this very expensive city?
So it's like good results, good job. Not good results, no good jobs.
Yeah, or just a very hard life trying to keep
Make
up
a
and
living.
sustain and make a living. The thing is that there are just so many limited professions that people can think of in this society that is actually lucrative or actually comfortable.
And why is it that some careers that we can be really proud of, that is very skillful, that nobody dares to like voice it out and think that it is as good enough? Like during my father's generation, being a carpenter, building cabinets and all that are something. If you are good enough with your hands, we always say that you were not starved.
In Europe, people can make a living by making glass. It's a very highly skilled job, and they can earn and can fetch a middle income salary from just doing that, right? But nobody can think of that in the Singaporean context. Like, okay, there are just a few jobs that you can get into in order to feel comfortable.
Right.
Yeah.
We always want to value skills. Am I right? Certain skills that they acquire, you never know that how they can use these skills to explore. Like I said, many times I think that now we're living in this society and this time that things keep changing, right? We would not know what kind of jobs will be created 10 years down the road. Why is it that we're not thinking that way?
Yes, why is it?
Why parents were not thinking it that way?
Yeah, so I think so I teach undergrads as well, right? And same problem occurs. They don't seem to know that there are many industries out there. I always tell them that, hey, you know, Singapore is one of the busiest ports in the world, and our shipping industry is huge. There's so many jobs there, and they cannot find young people. Or say the aerospace industry or manufacturing, right? There's high-end manufacturing. And so my students, they tend to think in terms of like very fixed roles, very fixed industries. So I guess my theory, right, is that they are limited due to firstly the amount of time they spend studying when they were young, right? If you've been put into tuition classes the whole week, you don't have time to explore the world.
True.
Yeah.
Yes.
So if the parents, I always hear of parents pick up the kids from school and then ship them off to tuition centers or to ballet classes and
I'm
so
the
on.
guilty one.
Sadly.
Sadly.
So if we are always driving the kids somewhere and putting them into a room where they're going to be doing some activity like tuition or ballet or music classes, these are not wrong, right? But how much time do they have to explore the world? How much time do they have to read? So I teach writing, I teach marketing and communication, and I try to expose them to new sources of information, to new examples, case studies that they find very strange because it's not in their realm of comfort. I think you agree with me. We spend a lot of time on our devices, on small screens, and the smaller the screen, right? Unfortunately, the smaller your worldview. Because you think that you have infinite amount of information on your screen, but actually you just want to keep watching the same stuff.
You're right.
The algorithm of, say, TikTok or these social media platforms will keep showing you what you want to see, right? Or what it thinks you want to see.
Yeah, actually, sometimes I find that children can be interested in certain things like piano or drawing, but if you want to make them take some tests, they would then say, "Oh, then I don't want to take the course anymore."
Yeah, it's true, right? I mean, sometimes we see some interest, okay, or some talent, right? Like art or music or whatever. Then we want to bite on that, right? Because hey, that's good for DSA, direct schools admission.
And we're doing the right thing because
Yes.
they're interested in it.
They're interested. Yeah. I can afford the lessons. Why not? But the interesting thing is that, and that happened with my own child, right? She self-taught ukulele. She went on YouTube and then started to strum and all of those things. I was like, wow, excellent. Would you like to go for classes? And she said, no, don't touch this. Don't touch this. No art class, no ukulele class, because once you do that, you take away all of my interest. Yeah. So and I thought that was quite insightful, right? Because then I was thinking, what would a lesson entail, right? It entail performance. Yeah. And then when once we have that, then it takes away all the interest.
I think there's always a constant struggle between what parents want and what parents think versus what the child really wants and thinks, right? But the whole conversation today is we want to make learning meaningful for the child, for our children, to make sure that they enjoy learning, right? Whether is it to just do well to pass on to go to the next grade or ready to explore their interest.
So Lina, I think that many of the parents, right, have worries about the future of the young person.
True, yes, definitely.
Basically, end of the day, I think that really drives a parent, right? Because they want to make sure that the future of the young person is secured. It's well-meaning, it's well-intentioned actually at the end of the day. But the thing is how we get there is the question, right?
Yeah.
Like y'all were saying about the child doesn't know about the future options. Do we actually really know about the future options for the young person? And this is where, in part, we work on having conversations in a very structured way about thinking about future, because when a child comes to us, they say they want to be a YouTuber, they want to be a podcaster. This is the new thing, right? Some comes to us and tell us that they want to be a gamer, right? So we bring in experts from esports and tell them how difficult is it to be a gamer, right? It's easier for you to become Lionel Messi than a footballer than to become an e-gamer. And so when I say it, no one wants to believe it. But when the e-game person, the expert in the profession comes in to say that, then they start to hear about it. But then they say there are many other professions within the e-gaming system.
Yes, yes.
You know, so it's about having that conversation in a structured way.
So is there any platform or is there any way that we can share with parents, our viewers, that they can actually help themselves to get to know more?
So it's called the ONET, where there is something called a RISEC test that they can go through. And then basically they find out whether they are more artistically inclined, what kind of jobs they will like. And then it will give you all the jobs in the world that will fit their profile.
Oh, is that so? I also didn't know. It's like we're so stereotyped into certain kind of jobs and prospect, right? Yeah, and we keep telling everyone that all pathway can lead to success and just how you define success, right? So I find that a lot of parents are very afraid to take risks, especially when it comes to letting their child fail and learn from failure. I don't think that it's something negative to embrace, right? Because we know that there are nobody feel good when they fail. And then they sometimes can be even more motivated to want to do well.
Yeah.
So what do you think?
Okay, so I have something to share which I think many parents will not feel comfortable with, because I believe parents have to be role models for failure. Right? So we have to try many different things ourselves, run into walls, fail, and then pick ourselves up again. And actually, my career has been, quite roller coaster. I started in the media as a journalist. Then I went to the IT industry, and then now I'm in academia. And along the way, I have tried many different things. I have failed in many different things, and I've picked myself up each time. I share these stories with my children over the dinner table. I tell them what I learned and where I want to go from here, you see. So as parents, fundamentally, our role is to be role models. And if we expect our children to be resilient and take risks, I think it starts with us.
Yes.
That we have to show that we can take risks. We laugh at failure, maybe smile, maybe not laugh, okay, and find help. How do we find help to pick ourselves up again? We need friends to help us. And I'm so thankful for all the friends who've come to help me over the years. Every time I've had difficulties. In that same way, my son, he's in between jobs right now. I said, well, you have several options ahead of you, right? Just try. And volunteer for a while, do an internship for a while, right? It's not the end of the world if it doesn't work out.
When you speak about your own failures, your kids understand what you're thinking about, and that is okay. But when you don't talk about your failures, then when suddenly the child fails, how would they feel about it? Because you have never really demonstrated how it looks like, when you fail, right? So then the child will become very reserved and feel like they are a burden or they let down the parent. That's one. Number two is, I think, having a collaborative approach with the young person. Like, I think the young person also have goals.
Yes.
And I think it's about trying to put that up and say, hey, what do you want?
We have a short clip for you to watch.
Hey, want to play Snap? Okay. The winner gets 10 points and the loser gets 0 points.
Let's play something without any winners or losers. Let's do some drawing.
Okay. The one with the best picture gets to put her drawing on the fridge.
But we both can draw nice pictures.
Nope. One has to be better.
Or we can just have fun.
No, Mommy. You always say I have to try my best. You are always happy with me when I win.
But I'm always happy with you.
You get extra happy when I get full marks and come in first.
What do you get?
7 out of 10. 5 out of 10.
So, you think I won't love you anymore if you don't do well?
We're all guilty, like Nuru in the show, right? Like we always praise our children when they do well, most of the time. Not that we don't praise our children in other circumstances, but I think that it's very natural for parents to kind of compare like that and also praise our children. So then how can we educate our parents then, to be careful of what we say?
When I saw the clip, the shock on the mom's face, right? Like, I didn't really realize that I have always been saying what we in psychology call conditional love, right?
Yes.
Meaning that, but I mean, it's not the intention. Obviously, she still tries to squeeze a smile when it is 5 out of 10, 7 out of 10. We
Yeah.
all do. But I think children are just very good at picking up the little things like that, right? Like, okay, you are visibly much happier when I bring home the results than you don't. But of course, we know that, children really need to feel secure no matter what. No matter what they bring back, in the form of results or anything at all, right? Even CCA accomplishments or peer relationship. Because who else, right? We are parents, we are really the secure base for our children.
Yeah, I think parents need to reflect on how we were brought up 20, 30 years ago, right? When Singapore was a different place, life was different, and we all just wanted to, progress, right, in the ways that we were told. So all those were good things. And today life has become a lot more complex. And we've also learned that people have different learning styles, right? And you can't apply the same teaching method to everyone. But today, I think as society has matured, we've discovered the multiple pathways and that we have different options. So it's only natural to react positively when people do well in school, right? Oh, great, great results. And then to have a black face when the grades don't come back well. And now the question is, we need to ask, are we imposing the ways that, say, our parents, right, my parents would have treated me in the past in terms of expectations versus today, and is that narrowing their options? A lot of people tell their kids to go into STEM or to go into lucrative careers. So when my daughter did well at the A-levels, and my friends asked me, hey, where is she going to study at university? What is she going to study? I said, she's going to do the arts. And they said, what? How can you as a father allow that? Why isn't she going to law? Why isn't she going to finance or business? I'm like, if I told her what to do, then I won't be the parent that I am, right? And that's how I bring up my kids. But they still disagree with me, right? And they think that I made a mistake. But I said, well, let us figure things out by ourselves, right? Because she has her own path. And I always tell my daughter, I don't want you to feel that I force you on a particular path. I want you to make your own decisions. And if they don't have enough information, maybe as parents, we should help them find out more information. But the decision, I feel, should always lie with the young person when they're older.
I think that there are ways that we can also find out how to work with our children so they don't miss out on their playtime and their sleeping time and their leisure, right?
Yep.
So do you have examples like that?
It's always finding out how much time do we have left in the day and what should we do with it, right, with our children. And then you have to balance that with, hey, there's homework to do, there's a test coming up, right, and helping them to prepare. So this is a constant negotiation of time. What is the sacrifice in terms of time that not just the kids have to make, but the parents have to make in order to have this meaningful timetable in a day, right? There's going to be trade-offs, and it's not going to be easy. For example, it may mean spending less time at work. But what does that mean for your career? Do you feel that if you spend less time at work and more time with your kids, that's going to impact your career and your earning power? So a lot of things lie with parents, because the children may be too young to understand how to manage their time or even do a timetable. So how do we take charge of ourselves, our lives first, so that we can help our children spend their time meaningfully?
I think nowadays, because time is scarce, right? Maybe a couple of generations ago, there was time for children to be bored. And it's in these times that they also have white space or creative space. And it's important for a young person to be bored. But nowadays, the young person are no longer bored. They are on screen time. They are doing something because of schedules that they have, like going for tuition, going for enrichment classes. And right now, that is also seemingly competing with family time. And when family time is reduced, then at what cost are we pushing the child towards academics and doing well for their future. When the relationships suffer, then everything else actually by right suffers.
So, I mean, quantity time is one thing, right? We talk about eating together, having that space together, but actually a lot of times it has also got to do with the quality. So, in my line of research, I do attachment research, look at parent-child attachment. And one of the things that we notice is that if the parents start to become very sensitive to your child's needs, and craft responses or craft support around those needs. So the key thing is really to know your child. If you craft those responses around those needs, children trust you. They learn two things actually. First is that they build a trust that if I'm in trouble, help will come. And the second thing is got to do with self-concept. That because I am a worthy person of love, so if I'm in trouble, the person who is important to me, the caregivers, will help me. So it builds trust in others and build a good self-concept. And it's in this trust in others that then intentions are interpreted correctly. Meaning that I know that no matter what my parents or my caregivers say, they always have my best interests at heart.
We need to teach also parents how to know the child, even though we have all this theory on how to do that. I find that sometimes we want to know the child, but the child has difficulty trying to explain himself or express themselves. So, Narashed, you have youth that complains that they wanted to make known to their parents, but they just find it difficult too.
A lot of times it's just hidden expectations, and I will also say that it's also the dynamic that the parent and the child has formed over a period of time. So sometimes when a child and parent relationship becomes negative, why it becomes negative is because there's a lot of scolding or being critical or controlling, and then the child kind of reacts to it. But we don't understand, or we don't know that when we have a negative interaction with a young person, maybe it takes another 5 positive interaction to outweigh balance that off, right? But we just go on. We just go on. And then what happens is that kind of negativity just continues. So there is a way to break this type of pattern of communication.
What is the way?
Firstly, have a ritual of connection. Okay?
Example?
Like it's really about timetabling even that. To when a child comes back home, how would you receive the child? What are you going to do in the first 15 minutes of the child returning back home? And then giving that space for the young person. But communicate it, right? Because sometimes the child doesn't know that you're going to be there. And maybe you have the space at the point of time, but the child doesn't have the space at the point of time. So having it communicated in advance helps to build the routine for the young person.
These are the things that stick with children. So, never undermine, I think, right? The little things that we do, the informal things, it may not be like, hey, how's your day, how's your homework, what did you learn in school today? I mean, these are things that could be important conversations, okay? But there are these little things that build connections.
There's also something called micro connection. It's that one nod, it's that smile, it's that wink, it's even
squeeze in a hand.
It's a squeeze of a hand or a thumbs up.
Yeah.
All this means a lot for the young person, and we miss out that these things may be trivial and not important, but actually a young person can remember that for the rest of the day until they come back to you again. So it's important to build connection in different ways, I would say.
So I believe that, Ian, you have gone through that, right? Knowing how you should know yourself first as a parent and before you know how to do it.
Yeah. So there's a lot of trial and error. Honestly, it takes years to figure things out.
Yes,
right?
definitely.
So I think the first thing, when I meet young parents today, people with young kids or babies, I said, first things first, your child is a random combination of genes and may or may not come out the way you expect them to, right? And your children can be very different from each other. So every child, when we say unique, sometimes we don't realize how unique they are. They may defy our expectations, in different ways. So this is where I think if parents first recognize that they are going to bring up a person in the household that may be very different from them, then they need to start thinking, okay, who am I as a parent, and who is this child that I'm bringing up? How are we different? How are we alike? And start adjusting. and this adjustment can take years, right? And it may change because circumstances change. So as an older parent, my kids are in their 20s now. Even now, I'm learning how to navigate, how to talk to them as they are now become adults, versus how I used to talk to them when they were young.
So I think the word attunement.
Yes, attunement. That's right.
Yes,
Naresh.
what is
Yes,
attunement?
Yes.
Attunement is something that when a parent, right, is sensitive to a young person, like how they are. And a lot of times it's our own expectations that comes in the way of attuning to a young person. And actually when we are able to sit with them, we are able to know how they are.
Yeah. Like if you tend to put down saying something that's very negative to shut the child, when he's trying to express something, then be mindful of that and try not to be too fast to speak. I know parents will tend to want to make comments. But then if you have to learn how to first question, to ask a question, then you have to be very mindful of that and to make that changes, right? Final thoughts? So what encouragement would you give to the fellow parents just trying to be the best for our kids?
I think it's good for parents to talk to other parents and ask them about their challenges rather than their dreams, right, for their children. Because everybody has big dreams for themselves and their children. So I ask, hey, what challenges do you face and how are you dealing with it? A senior photographer told me, Ian, you're going to have a child soon. I just tell you this. Once you have a child, you never stop worrying for a child, even when the child is an adult.
Yes.
And I've always held that advice to my heart, that all of us are worried for our children, one way or another. And we all deal with it in different ways. We should know our child best, and what works for other parents may not work for our child, but knowing that we're not alone really, really helps.
So I think parenting is not just about skills. It's about relationship. You are your child's best bet.
Because knowing that, every parent is different, every family circumstance is different, it's hard to even give advice, right? Like, who am I to know what you're going through in your lives as parents? So I always just go with, parents, please be kind to yourselves. Parenting is the toughest job on earth. It's the most irrational job that you can go into because it's an energy expense. Caloric energy expense is, of course, money. It's a lot of resources, a lot of worrying. But yet we still want to do it. So give yourselves a pat on the shoulder for plunging into it. And of course, knowing that, of course, the child didn't choose this path, right? They didn't ask to be born. So let's just make everyone's lives a little bit easier. Make your life also easier by having a lot of self-compassion and also a lot of compassion towards the child and what they're going through in their social lives.
Thank you. Our children don't need perfect parents. They need parents who see them and love them unconditionally. I think the moments that my children needed me most were never the ones when I pushed the hardest, but when I was present. Thanks to our panelists for your insights. Thank you so much. Thanks for watching Canteen Chats. See you next time.